This
Clock.
conference will now be recorded.
Going to call.
You're on there.
All right, I'm on now. Time being 6 o'clock, I'm going to call to order the joint meeting of the Tilton Planning Board and the Tilton Zoning Board of Adjustment. And I would also like to welcome the Conservation Commission. We thought it was appropriate to invite you to the workshop to help us out with some things that we may need to do. I'm going to start the meeting by going around the room and introducing ourselves to each other. I know that we work closely together, but sometimes we don't always know who's who. I'll start. I'm Jane Alden. I'm chair of the planning board, and I'll go to my right first, and then we can go around.
Matt Gilman, Chair of the Zoning Board.
John Scanlon, Selectmen, and also Planning Board.
Brian Pease, Zoning Board.
Scott Ruggles, Selectmen.
Eric Usinger, Zoning Board.
Kathy Mitchell, Conservation Commission.
Chuck Mitchell, Conservation Commission.
Owen Hanks, mother of two, wife to a man I love, live in the Locklear Village District, Conservation Commission.
Paul Rushlow, Conservation Commission.
Paul, one more time, I get your last name, Paul?
Rushlow, R-U-S-H-L-O-W.
Thank you.
Thomas.
For those of you who are fortunate enough not to know me, my name is Tom Damon. I'm on the planning board.
Oh, I think everyone knows me. Leanne Moynihan, land use coordinator. You guys will skip me.
And Miranda, zoning board.
Well, again, welcome all of you. I don't think we've done this for a long time, but I want to give you a little bit of history. I think it was about 3 years ago, the land use coordinator put together a whole group of suggested ordinances to be presented to the voters. And no one on the planning board liked any of them. That was before Leanne came. No one liked any of them. So we decided not to have any. Then Leanne came and she did the same, went through the same exercise. And again, no one on the planning board liked any of them. So we went to town meeting and we had no ordinances to be approved.
We had a couple.
But I think, yeah, we had a couple, but we've always gone through this and we've always waited till the last minute to come up with things. Some of which made sense, some of which didn't have a lot of forethought into it. So the planning board decided probably about 6 months ago that this year we'd like to try something different. We'd like to get together with the zoning board and with the Conservation Commission and have a workshop to talk about exactly what we want to go in front of the voters come election. I want to also say that it's not necessary to have any. There's no requirement whatsoever that we have any, but usually traditionally we have. And I know that in doing work on the planning board, several items have come up, and one that comes to mind, I think that we had very recently was the requirement of plans for a 100-year storm. Well, all of us have required that of everyone who's come before the planning board. And all of a sudden we had someone who came in and said, well, I looked at your regulations and I didn't see that. And sure enough, when we looked, we did not have that as a requirement. So that's something that we said, well, gee, we really need to come up and change that. So that's just one example of things that can come up. And I know on the planning board that things come up many times and we discuss them. Maybe sometimes we wouldn't have to discuss them as vehemently as we do if we had an ordinance to address it. So hopefully tonight we can come out with something as a group that will benefit all of us, will benefit the town, each committee, and we can move forward and present that to the voters. Or again, we may come up with nothing. We'll see at the end of that. But just to give you a view, we'll have breakout sessions and we'll work separately. I'd like to sit probably with this group, maybe have 3 breakout sessions. The 2 documents which I would suggest using, the master plan and I think all of you, Leanne has copies of the ordinances that exist now, to look at those as starters, to come up with any suggestions that you may have. Then we'll come back, we'll be broken out into sessions for, let's say, 45 minutes, then we'll come back. We will board all of the suggestions and then prioritize and hopefully come up with some suggestions to present to the voters. Are there any questions? Does everybody have a copy of both of these documents?
No, I didn't make that many
Master
master
plans.
plans, so they
Okay.
can,
Well, and we'll put a master plan here, and
there's one,
Yeah,
somebody,
right here.
Matt has one.
this is mine, and you have
And
yours.
there's the one in the red. clip.
Yeah, and I will share this, so I'll put this here.
Oh, there's another one.
Okay, and I think there's another one if anyone
Trying to
wants
save a
to.
few trees.
Okay.
There's another master.
Are there any questions? Helen?
Did any board tracker trend, any change of law that we should be aware of with regard to our current regulations, and if those laws impact either adjusting our regulations to a greater variance than the state?
Yeah, I did check to see if there was any that had to be changed. Sometimes you get those statutes, like you're saying, that have to be changed. I didn't see any this year that had. There were some in the past couple of years, but I didn't see anything.
And when, so DES is massive, also rule changes, there aspects on septic or water placement or anything of that nature.
I didn't see any.
I get alerts on my email, and I have gotten none.
Just
Okay,
wanted to-
so to my knowledge, there are none.
Put them right up there now.
Right.
Okay. I guess we have people with different experience levels, so I would like to, when we break off, I would like to see us go with experience level, and I'm not sure how best to do that.
Well, we're all green on the zoning board.
That's all one group.
You said-
But very enthusiastic.
And that's good,
Willing to learn.
that's good. So if,
I mean, you could just count off 1, 2, 3.
yeah, I was
and
just
all the
gonna
ones
say,
go
why don't we
out.
start by counting off 1, 2, 3 and see what we come up with breakout groups.
And I won't be in a group, maybe I'll just float to kind of see.
I was gonna say, if you could just go around and check to make sure
Yeah.
everybody's progressing. Can we use that office in here?
Oh,
Since
yeah.
we,
Yeah, the one on the right,
Okay.
yeah.
we'll use this room,
I'll use, yeah.
that office, and I think the sewer commission's meeting downstairs.
But you could use if you want to use the break room downstairs or go.
Yeah, either the break room downstairs, which
I wouldn't
may,
use.
because she may
John's
have to
area,
come
because
up.
that's her
Yeah.
area.
So,
You should be able to have two groups. up
yeah,
there.
we
Yeah,
have,
just
we
sit in the
can,
back
yeah.
there and then one in there.
Just don't be too rowdy. And that, I'm speaking of the Conservation Commission, I know, you knew I was, didn't you, Chuck? Okay, so let's count off 1, 2, 3.
Want to start, Brian?
Oh, I was gonna start
Oh,
with
so Ann, yeah. that's fine.
2,
1,
2,
3,
1,
2,
3,
1.
2, 3.
Oh, it worked out even.
sure does.
All right, so I guess you want to, all the threes can go in that office. You can
That's
pull some
fine, yeah.
chairs. 2 in the
The
back,
2
and 1
can
can
go in
stay
the
up
back.
here. And, I don't get any. Tom, do you need it? Do you have a copy? Yeah, so we'll have these chairs.
And I think we can be safe in saying to just jot down in English, and then we'll let Leanne go through all the rigmarole of the legalese of putting the warrant together.
Do you want to recess it or?
Hmm?
Not recess the thing or just do those lights?
I don't think this is. What?
This is strange, I see on
You have the same number in each group.
Zoom, and that's about it.
Right, yeah.
You know,
4, 4, and
I am number 1.
Oh,
Yeah.
Looks like it's meeting.
Well, thinking, well, I guess.
Do you need a-
100-year storm.
Here's the master.
Oh, that's.
Master
and
plan?
I'm not sure if it says anywhere in any of our ordinances that the requirement or should be, whether it's an ordinance or is it just
So I know
an
that
information?
on the Conservation Commission, because of the numbers of the storm events we've experienced over the last 10 years. We incorporate it part of our surveying packet. But to the point of this comment, I don't think it's prescriptive anywhere, nor is it prescriptive with DES because it hadn't been typical. But when we found it to be actual typical pattern, that's when we decided, listen, we have large bodies of water, we have culverts that fail, we have no low areas of geography in the town. It's just responsive both to commercial areas and then abutting property owners to recognize that it's a valuable piece of information that we're seeing those have been atypical and it's more typical.
So I just want to just interject on before you get too far into the 100-year storm. Right now, that requirement for a 50-year, which is what we have, is in the regulations and not in the ordinance. So we certainly can change the regs without going to the voters to a 100-year requirement. The planning board can apply that through the regs, and we can do that with a change and a vote on the board. It doesn't have to go to the voters. So that really isn't a zoning amendment unless you really wanted to add that to the zoning ordinance. But right now, it's part of your regulations and you require 50-year. So we would just change that to 100 and have a vote on it. So I just wanted to put that out there. Everybody that you thought.
To Leanne's point, that's a smart way to approach it because if we then go another, say, 5 years and you don't see one, then you're able to ease nimble and going back to the voter, especially since some of us are going to be able to predict, meteorology, because I know that like some of the weather I look outside and go, were they right or wrong?
There was one other thing is what recently came up, one of the meetings was at Cambridge. We want to go and start putting free charging stations, which, you know, electric charging, which is great. However, after asking more information, found out that what they're putting in is it's a 57-inch diagonal.
They're actually screens. So what they do is it's free charging. It's a free charging station. I think they have them at the Buckingham Mall down in Salem, but they have these big 7-foot charging stations. And then on the front is an electronic LED display that advertises. And the advertisements paid for electricity.
So it's going-
But actually a clarifying question. So make sure I know what we're charging these days. Is this for cell phone devices or cars? Because Dunkin' Donuts has a bank of them over there. And I thought that was interesting.
And that's simple because when they want to have any traffic, right, parking, and they don't advertise it. That was Tesla. These are not Tesla, these are Voltar, and they rely on advertising for their electronic charging.
Charging technology when it's plugged in, but it's a different visual graphic is what you're.
Right, it's a different, it's not just Tesla, those are Tesla versus other, you know, because moving towards all, you know, electric cars. But the problem here is because this is all new and these advertisements, we do not allow off-site signage or advertising. So they can't do that. They'd have to go for a variance and then there's going to be, and it's going to come up in different areas again.
I actually know that it would come up a lot because I think about, again, it's the one-offs. I think that's probably a very appropriate variance until we see a better pattern of the technology. But the other only exception that I see is literally you probably asked, like, why is the gas pump showing me a TV show?
Well, right.
Those have been, and I didn't know they were doing the big electric.
It's kind of like that, I think.
So this is actually really big. Their stocks going, there's thousands of these.
Yeah.
And they want, but I think it's start with 20 or 17 or something. They start with
I think you'll
17.
see them at Lowe's. I think you'll see them at Home Depot. You'll see them most certainly over in like grocery stores. You'll see them anywhere. Electric cars are going to gather a lot.
The problem with just, if you are looking to change your ordinance for that, you gotta be careful, because if you allow them to do off-premise signage, you can have every business where they can advertise for other
Oh,
businesses.
sure, yeah.
So either
So
you
it's
have
marketing,
to
it's
frame
video
it,
marketing and advertising.
right, so you're gonna have to either frame it that it's only for a certain type, or like Helen
Put
said, maybe you just let the
restriction on the
variances
screen
work, because otherwise you open this up to
Can't be
everybody.
big.
You could end up, we could end up looking silly.
Like Las Vegas or
Yeah,
Times Square,
Yeah.
you know, with the electronic video.
to your experience on
And
the
they also
zoning
say-
board, it gives you the look and feel of the one, you experience one, and then you experience another one. It may not be the same, but you either start to understand a town-supported pattern, right? Or a town awareness of this technology is gonna make us Las Vegas.
Well, Biden was just here today, Woodstock, and the infrastructure bill has money from Hampshire as we get more money.
Right.
And part of it is for the electric. One of the things is the electric.
But those electric charging stations don't have to have
They
the
give you 1 hour.
publication. They don't have to have the advertising.
Is that what they did? They give you 1 hour charge?
Yeah, then you have to pay after that.
Okay.
But and it's, whether you're charging or not, it's displaying on the side where the traffic is.
Sure.
Cars are.
But we already have an example of it that doesn't incorporate that advertising.
Right.
And so just because there's, $1 trillion being pushed in infrastructure across our country, it doesn't mean we have to say as a town, we're gonna allow this advertising version.
Yeah, I know.
When we know next to Dunkin' Donuts, there was a benign, accessible electric charging station that doesn't have both the, I'll call it the nuance visuals.
Right.
And probably more aware because he's like a teenage son. You think about it, a new driver, turning that corner
Oh, yeah,
of Dunkin' Donuts, and then you've got this advertisement.
right,
You're gonna increase the accident potential.
exactly.
How big are these screens?
57 inches diagonal.
That's huge.
Oh,
They're 7 feet tall. So I'm 6, so they're this big. And I think they're 3 or 4 feet wide.
oh, I didn't
And they were
understand.
going to put, I think it was 17 of them
I did
in the
not
parking lot.
realize that.
Yeah, that's gonna
See,
get
I was
distracting.
thinking it was,
And
What kind of
you know, then
community-
I'm like,
What kind of community do we want to be?
Right.
that's a
Not
big
many people have
screen.
electric cars anyway.
yeah. At the gas station, they have the little, you
Right.
don't have to. And
Right.
They're usually there advertising somebody's coffee or something.
Yeah, they're small. I understand what you're saying completely. I didn't realize
So
that.
my concern is, the bright, because they can be
They can
flashing.
flash,
It's a
right.
distraction, it's a
They're-
distraction.
Interesting.
And I think I would have maybe a little more empathy for charging technology exists, but we already have a pre-existing example of how you can provide that charging technology without 1 hour, 1 hour free, come over here and look at me.
Right.
And it's a
Interesting.
slow charge, so it doesn't give you a.
Oh, so they're not really giving you an hour fast charge.
They're gonna put
Very
it-
small.
I think it
They're
was
working you
3
up
of them.
for the billable minute.
I wonder what the Teslas charge in comparison.
It's probably faster and then.
You know, like, who's paying for that?
You pay for it.
You're
with
the-
your-
the person.
I guess I don't know.
So it's just a charging
When you
station.
plug your.
My
car
understanding
in,
is it's
your
just
car
like an
has like a,
ATM machine.
Yeah, you put your card in.
for, somebody told me that your car is coded so that when it plugs in, it sends a signal.
I'm not sure if that's, I'm sure that's probably
That's
both
fascinating.
forms of technology.
Yeah.
I will say that
This
this
is our-
one's definitely common. Electric cars.
So does our ordinance for signs actually clearly written in such a way that covers that type of advertising?
But do we want it? So the point of the matter is, do we want to allow for it? Or do we want to cause it to be zoning? It's because we don't want to. I don't think we want to all of a sudden look like Back to the Future when they're flying cars and 7-foot digital signs, because I do think that becomes a very visually distracting element, especially in a high traffic location of a parking lot, things of that nature. With the you either have elderly drivers, younger drivers, and then think about the distractions of already existing cell phones.
If you look in the regulations of zoning, it already says about control signs which increase the likelihood of accidents by distracting attention, obstruction of vision.
I think it's probably well there.
Yeah.
So is it-
Or could you
It's
just,
on page 11 in the regulations.
Knowing that a lot of people are gonna want this, instead of maybe clogging the zoning board, could you just put a restriction on the size of the screen?
Well,
And if they
again,
don't wanna do that, then.
there's already technology that exists in our own community that has it without having an advertising screen. So
But
why?
you don't get an hour free. If they did a screen this big,
I don't get an hour of gas free.
I agree. But my whole thought is if the screen was like maybe even half of this size.
I think it's a little odd that we're worried about the economy of scale for charging a vehicle owned by a personal driver.
I agree.
Right?
Well,
And,
I think, you
and
know,
again, I think it goes back to, we make different views, that's okay, of what do we want the look and feel of this town to have.
Covers it right there.
Thank you. I heard you do that. Yeah, page 11. But I'll give you a great example.
oh, I'm fine.
There's a community in Florida, and this is a pretty extreme community, and they've kept it this way for decades, where they have no roadside signage. They have so many prohibitions that it looks like old school Florida, absolutely no signs. And to try to find a business is very interesting, especially as a tourist. So that's pretty extreme. And I can remember as a young girl growing up here, listening to municipal leaders say, what do we want Tilton to be? What is Tilton exit 20? Or is Tilton more country feel, or whatever that is, more colonial? But, and these decisions we make today impact what the look and feel is, either by area, and zoning areas, or by allowances and giving variances, or straight just opportunities. What do we want it to be? Do you want it to be Vegas? Do you want it to be Laconia? Do you want it to be, what do we want Tilton to be? I know what I want Tilton to be, but it doesn't mean that everybody wants to be.
Well, you know, I guess the thought is, my thought, you know, having remembered when getting off exit 20 was just,
Tumbleweed.
was just hike industry,
Yeah.
and it looked like garbage.
Yeah.
In my mind, that whole district over there is already built up. I mean, it is already full of signs.
Yeah.
They're already gonna change electrically soon, and they'll be like,
So do we change? We make it
I don't think
worse?
well, I
We
don't think
try to
we
control
do, but like the thought might be, would electrical charging stations bring in more business? Can we control the signage?
I would add, the town already has them, and I hardly ever see cars plugged into them. And even though they're
But
not
that's
free
new,
for an hour.
right? That's new.
People with an electric car.
And I
are
would
gonna know
say
that it's there.
with the issue of supply right now, like if you wanted an electric car right now, you'd be maybe even hard pressed to find one.
Any car.
Right, so any car. So I can't say that, you know, going to an electric station right now and seeing like a bunch of vacancies, because of the pandemic, I don't believe that's indicative of where this is going to explode.
But I guess I'm going back to, as a community, we know that people with electric cars can get that electricity in a charging station without a digital advertisement.
Sure.
So do we want to see a saturation of those with digital advertisements? Or do we want to say, if you come to our community and you want to create a bank of electrical charging stations, we don't want to see it done through digital advertising. We want to see it done the way we just saw it, which is benign, it's there, it's available, it's not a visual distraction. It doesn't increase what I would call is already a visual distraction by accident.
I agree.
And I would say, definitely equitably balanced enough that if that was the only way you could get them, like, we would be going, all right, control the size, but if we know that it exists now, that we're not impeding access to the technology, then I think we say that's what we want.
I think there'll be a lot of communities saying no to that huge board.
Yeah.
And I think you will see them shrink. I think you will see them shrink to the point where you're doing it. They're gonna hit you with a couple advertisements while you're trying to keep your car, whatever. And they hit you with like 2 30-second
Yeah,
ads.
it's like they come and get a cup of coffee or.
Just like YouTube. I want to watch that video and they hit you with a couple ads. And I'm gonna watch 2 30-second ads to be able to get to the YouTube video or the charging station. And so they don't need to be.
So let's force the technology to adapt itself to our level.
Which is already,
Yeah, it seems like it's covered in there.
yeah, it's already covered in there.
I'm trying to think anything else that came up over the last year.
You guys usually get the lighting comes up a lot. Lighting came up with the Honda Planet, high down lighting.
Parking is going to is already an issue, but one of the things that we bump up against here is, it seems that in the downtown area, in the downtown area, the biggest expansion request is more apartments. And I know the planning board, actually a couple years ago, had to rule on a place across the street, adding more apartments at where the laundromat is. And the ordinance reads that they have to have approval if they're expanding downtown. They have to have approval of the planning board or the code enforcement officer to ensure that there's available parking. And I remember the planning board struggled because, I mean, how do you know, is there available 2 more spaces somewhere? Because they're not all named. I mean,
Sure.
so remember that, John? You weren't on the board at the time. I think you were.
I know it's come up.
Yeah, but anyway, and the planning board said, I guess, we're okay with it. Well, if you keep adding apartments, I mean, we keep wanting to revitalize downtown, and we hear the businesses say parking's an issue, and you keep giving more apartments, they have 4 apartments, they want 5, they have 3, they want 4. And you say, well, I guess there's parking. So maybe you consider some kind of ordinance that says, if you're going to expand, you must provide 2 spaces,
For
whether
every
that's coming to the
apartment.
town and leasing 2 spaces, finding 2 spaces, or there are no spaces.
Right.
And that will limit, it's kind of a way of putting a moratorium on apartments.
There
Just
was
about.
always something like that, that you
Well,
needed
there
to
is,
have
it says they have
two
to
parking spaces per apartment.
except in downtown,
So now we should
Oh.
include.
because there aren't any parking spaces.
So,
And if you look at the parking ordinance, I believe it's page 39. I think it's 39. Hold on. And we really should start to look at that, because I'm telling you, there's such a demand for apartments that these landlords know that they can rent them.
and make,
It's like Manhattan, they're turning
It's
closets
not
into
39,
bedrooms.
hold on, I'm sorry. 29, 29, I'm sorry, page 29.
oh,
First paragraph right on the top says, except in the downtown district, off-street parking.
oh,
But prior to approval of a new use, change of use, or expansion of use, the planning board and/or the code enforcement officer may require verification existing public parking will provide adequate parking accommodations. You can leave it like that and let the planning board be the muscle and say, well, you have to prove to us. Or you can make it even more cut and dry and say, you need to provide 2 spaces and show where they're going to be.
I think we're probably at the point where the latter makes more sense. Because I mean, the planning board's going to experience, well, there's the developer who rolls in with attorney A. Well, you can't make him do that because it says, and you're now impeding the revenue of my blah, blah, blah. Again, depending on the makeup of the planning board, this is no disrespect to the planning board, it's atypical for people to experience being part of lawsuits all the time.
And the planning board changes, right?
Yeah, and
You know?
if we just recognize that we've allowed enough residential opportunity in downtown, I mean, I don't think we're all gonna go, yeah, we should put a double decker garage out back at this point, because that's also a tax-based question. That we
And
can,
if somebody wants to step up and pay for that, some developer,
and then the town is interested in it.
Right.
Then it creates a more affirmed dialogue between the builder and the town.
So we have one building, which is the one with the used clothing store there.
the what?
The one
Used
down-
Used
clothing.
clothing.
Yeah, next to
Nickels
the
and
church.
dimes?
Yeah, so you can get nickels and dimes there. And out back, they own that whole area where they could provide parking for their residents.
Right.
However, they refuse to go and do it, fence it off, blocking it off. Now the residents use the downtown area for parking, although they have a lot.
right.
And there's a plan, I think. We looked at that because we were looking at parking. There's a plan that shows that as a lot.
Originally it was the auction house here.
Yeah, that's Canulo's building, right?
Yeah. And
And he's one of the ones that wants another apartment on his.
Yeah, so
So if it's,
how can we address them? You know,
would it be striking the except in the downtown district, and what adjustments would need to happen to the table below? Or would the table below suffice at this point? And then if this change happened, are there existing situations where we would cause it a problem? Or would they be grandfathered?
Oh, yeah.
Well, they'd have to be grandfathered, it'd have to be any future as this is word, any expansion would require proof of available, would have to provide 2 parking spaces per apartment.
Yeah, so it would just be striking that exception in the downtown district and start with off-street parking, right? On your page 29?
Yeah, yeah, and maybe put a requirement. I have to think about whether we leave all of it
would be
as different.
Right? No, because it would be a residential dwelling, right? Unless the definition of residential dwelling doesn't include apartments.
6 o'clock.
Oh, it's 6 o'clock?
Yeah, they're in breakout groups. We want to join, maybe you want to join Jane's group. They're just in breakout room. Just get in the conversation. They're just talking about possible changes.
You can't make a zoning that says no overnight parking downtown on the streets.
Oh, we have all that.
There is a
So
parking
then wouldn't
ordinance.
that, you could just move the hours.
And then you have the law enforcement.
Well, once you start ticketing, like I work at a school, once the kids see a car getting towed away, it sends the message.
But they still need to provide parking. Is there enough parking in the back, not just on, you mean anywhere in the downtown? There is overnight in the downtown because people that live there park back here.
Sure, that's what I mean though.
But there's not even enough left there.
Right, I'm talking Route 3 and Route 3 for your businesses downtown, like the restaurant. What could potentially happen in Tilton is one restaurant could beget more restaurants, and then you're gonna start getting traffic, foot traffic, and you can't have restaurants
No,
without.
So that's an interesting.
I mean, that's how Portsmouth started.
That's an interesting thought pattern. Do you say something a bit more, I'll call it purposely restrictive use, that the downtown and prescribe this parking is only used for businesses?
And we do have that. We have designated areas that are labeled and marked. The residents have to get stickers to park overnight out back.
Mhm.
The problem is, a lot of.
Right, they're not supposed to park out front overnight.
Okay,
So what we have is, with the nickels and dimes place, they have the whole top floor that's currently vacant that they'd like to turn into apartments. However, if they do, that would be, if it was 2 per apartment, there'd probably be like 8 apartments up there. So that would need 16 more parking spaces downtown.
It's not even down, and yeah, in back. I mean, the problem is in back too.
So
We're not
the
spending-
previous people here would now be squeezed out.
Which would be you.
so it goes back to what Neil was referencing, which is this, take this exception out. And they'd have to demonstrate
2 parking spaces.
2 parking spaces per apartment, and if they own that spot, they can build their own little dome.
Yeah, off street.
And then. so
Or
that
get
throws it out the
Manulo
zoning board
to
to
do
figure-
a parking and.
All
lease
right, well,
parking
but
for
that's a
everybody.
good one though.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because
That's a good
if there's no parking
Or at least
downtown,
from
then businesses won't make money.
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of
You're like-
opportunities, right?
Not our problem.
Exactly.
Or don't build the apartment.
Correct, right? And if- Yeah,
Yeah, if they're gonna get the revenue,
that's your situation.
invest it.
Yeah.
So it's just, again, kind of trying to be, it would be nice if they did it 10 years ago, but you start now and,
You gotta start somewhere.
yeah.
Yes, and in 2004, they tried to tell us there most slopes in the town.
The other thing
Yeah, slopes.
Oh,
that we've talked about a little bit is considering what legislation is going to do if the federal government or at the state level, they might be legalizing marijuana and cannabis, and what Tilton wants to do if they want to be proactive and zone for it so that it doesn't come in anywhere and everywhere. Because if there is no zoning for it, if someone came in and said they wanted to open, it became legal in March, and then in May, 3 places wanted to open, I can't say you can't go there because we don't have anything that says where it goes.
So school districts, would that be covered
Yeah,
over there?
school district doesn't know,
The
right?
drug-free
Okay.
zone.
It'd be like liquor.
So to her point, I have family in Maine, and because they weren't thinking proactively like that, there were these beautiful large residential homes, and they put in a cannabis dispensary across the street.
Sure.
Because they didn't zone that particular business to be in this particular area of the town without being prejudiced to the business type. And I suppose you could, fight that challenge, but.
So you don't zone it out, you zone it in where you
zone it
want to
where you
control
can
where it is.
tolerate it, where you're willing to tolerate it. If you're not willing to fight the, I don't want it in my town.
certainly not in my backyard, but that's.
And it may or may not be this year, and maybe it's just something to start a conversation about, but,
I think it's coming again. I would agree.
There
When
are-
you're watching all the
there
other
are
states
there are-
incur all the revenue from it.
There are 7 LSIs already submitted to legalize it again this year.
Oh, it'll happen.
The
Well,
gateway drugs.
Where would it be?
Yep.
There's research.
If
in
you have
both
an addictive,
directions.
if you have an addictive personality,
Yeah,
absolutely.
you could start with caffeine.
so is the state liquor store, right? So.
Yeah.
Exactly.
They can put it adjacent.
But that doesn't mean we want it in downtown or with, we've already got the vape shops and all. that.
Right.
I would prefer to see
It's the new dollar
shop
store.
You have to get rid of the vape shops.
Yeah. Can we zone those out?
Yeah. Well, you can zone any future ones out, and that's another thing we should start to look at. Again, you have to do it all in 1 year, but, we gotta start to
Competitive
set
business, yeah.
if we want to revitalize this downtown, you can't just let everybody.
To that point, because let's say that the momentum of the legislature, which is still pretty split Republican, Democrat,
Right, but Sununu's staying, so it
Yeah.
probably won't happen.
he'll veto it, he's already said that.
Right,
Um,
and he'll get reelected, so.
Maybe.
But if it
I'd
passed,
actually question that one.
I don't know. I could tell you.
He's pissed off a lot of people lately.
That's the massacres.
Oh, no, the abortion, he's opened that up.
Well,
He's
that-
now allowing that
Because he didn't-
redistricting map to go through when he
didn't
said if
read-
it didn't pass the SNP test, but now he's like, oh, that's okay. And if you've looked at
But
it,
it's also,
he would like to be District 1.
you think about the 400 House reps and then the 30 plus senators, it has to go through their hands first. And then, and then he can veto it and take it 2/3. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So if we
But-
did allow it, where would we?
But I was just gonna say that, if something was to pass, it wouldn't pass until after July. And if the governor vetoed it, it would take a 2/3 majority vote. They didn't succeed the last time.
They'll not succeed this time.
Right, because they can't get their houses in order. So you're not gonna, you do have time. So I think it's a wise question and you have time to think of it.
Right, it's just put out there, get people.
What do we, it would be.
I mean, I don't know where you think it would be.
Earlier.
It's in the master plan. I believe the last page of the master plan might have it. It's the one with the red, you got the red, full set.
That's not color.
That's groundwater. Zoning,
Yeah, that's it. Thank you so much. I would, you could put it in industrial. Right, that's where you put it.
Right, because
You're gonna put
industrial,
it- You put it in industrial. It's
and that's pretty limiting.
outside, Not readily visible and not obvious.
No residential, right?
And when you go back there, it'll be obvious to people what they're going back there for. Industrial would be the place where you're gonna allow it and talk about it specifically. That's what I would say.
I agree.
Keeps it out of your zone commercial, keeps it out of your residential.
Signage,
I think you can put that. That's a smart move. Smart move.
Is it just the industrial is up on, where's the industrial zone on there? Up on Sanborn?
Right. and it's
Is there
up
anywhere
tucked
else?
back, the dark spot.
And all by Manville? Is that industrial by Manville?
Tucked out back, right? I think it's just because.
What IBM is?
Yeah.
This must be industrial. There's the two areas.
I think that one little spot, just because
Right near
it's
the
in
police
there,
station.
There you go.
right? Right?
yeah.
Although the park is over there too, that new, that's in the park. There's a park, but it's on, about the police station.
But any of those current industrial parks, you're way down.
Right. I agree.
Yeah.
And nobody's
What
gonna,
else? Driving.
Is that-
Anything else?
I'm sorry, Celine.
Anything else?
And I'm thinking of things people complain about this, but they've all benefited us with projects that have gone wrong. So I think about, we had U-Haul at the Conservation Commission that didn't like the 120-foot setback from the sewer, but that was a win because they had a septic fail because it was 125 feet back. It didn't go into the wetlands. It didn't affect the butters. So that validated our over conservative approach. But I was trying to think about other things that.
You know, you don't have a very large, you actually don't have a very large buffer from, you only have 20 feet
Only butter? Is that what you're thinking about?
on the wetlands, on any wetland.
I thought we changed that to, did we change it to 100? Or was that for specific? Was that?
That's for any, that's for a vernal, let me get, hold on, page 29. John, we looked at this the last time we were reading.
Yeah,
Remember we were reading the,
Something about Brooks. That it-
well, we were trying to figure out the brook, but, let's see.
Wait, I like that we get a business to have to come and say why. Why? They bought some property, they ask for a variance for good cause shown, or they don't show enough good cause. And we should say no. We have reasons. And then I would just note myself, I don't want us to become the Northfield of Tilton with a bunch of Brazilian townhouses and condos. It's not the town I want to live in, so that's just, if anybody brings that up, I just want you to know. Especially since I don't think we have impediment taxes or anything like that. We get people, and all I think about is Airbnbs and the lake and the milk oil problems. Hard to re-exist, so it just.
Well, you've
I
probably
don't
seen
mind,
it.
I don't mind if you
You've
want
seen
to
the
like,
lake on a Sunday afternoon.
I don't mind if we want to be like Center Harbor with big people houses that pay big taxes.
But did you ever look at the drive over the bridge?
Oh, God, yeah.
And it's-
Yeah, the mosquito
Yeah.
bridge
The
there.
whole section
yeah.
there, it's like,
Although, well,
it
because
looks
there's
like
that
Star
little,
Drive or
Right.
Rush Hour.
Yeah.
It's like,
yep, there's that
Yeah.
whole little sandbar there.
Oh, it's
And then just like,
unbelievable.
just a stream of boats.
It's wild.
So, John, it was in the wetland, it's on page 55, the district boundaries. The wetland conservation district includes surface water, wetlands, buffers 100 feet wide around bogs over 1,000 square feet, vernal pools over 500 square feet, wetlands of any size adjacent to open water, and all other wetlands over 40,000 square feet. Otherwise, it's a buffer of 20 feet wide around all other wetlands and surface waters. So 20 feet isn't a lot,
It's not.
but I'm certainly not trying to make things more difficult for people. But
I mean, even if we up that to double that, which would be 40 feet, that might be more reasonable, then people could still seek a variance, depending on if they have something not conforming to a lot. Right?
right.
And then it deals with all of those atypical bodies of water we think about, old brooks you forget
Well,
about.
some of your bodies of water are not.
They're not very big, but
Right,
they're
these-
valuable. They're seasonally valuable, I guess I would say. We have a lot of interesting intermittent streams and brooks that aren't always running, but when they run, they're feeding large aquifer areas or swamp areas that then feed other aquifer areas, depending on the areas of the town. So, I mean, just change 14 to 3.1 and do buffers, it'd be 40 feet wide around all of these waters. And again,
It is going to affect a lot of your properties. There are a lot of brooks here, you know, obviously you run out to the river, so you know.
But I think that you've said it before, but it doesn't prohibit them from coming in and saying, okay, here I have this very unusual lot. This brook, which is an intermittently fed, completely interfering. Would you let me have a 20-foot instead of 40? But it would say that we are watching some of our water resources just disappear. And it does, I think it should concern us considering the size of the aquifer that we have in our community that abuts Belmont and others. And then the large streams and what feed those streams.
Yeah, and then the other thing we got hung up on, right, John, was a wetland of any size adjacent to open water. So,
Did that come from DES? Is that from the rules? From old? I think it's
Maybe from old rules,
but I don't think
because
it's current.
it's confusing, because if you say wetlands of any size adjacent to an open water, well, every open water has a brook feeding into it. So if you're adjacent to the brook up here, and that brook is going into, we'll say, the river or the lake, are you adjacent to the open water source? Where does that, where does the adjacent, what does the adjacent mean?
If you're referring to wetlands and just marked areas, but it, under the definition, brooks are considered wetlands.
Right. But I think.
Right, but it wouldn't be a 100 feet setbacks. It's 100 feet of any adjacent to an open water. Well, are you adjacent to an open water if you're adjacent to the brook that feeds into the open water?
I think that that's probably an extreme definition. Because we have we certainly have waterfront property, who do not have a wetland adjacent to the lake. Westchester Lake is a perfect example.
Right.
Some of them, it's interestingly drawn right up to the lake. And then some of them literally, it's cat and nine tails. We go down Manville Road, down some of those little, they're not, they don't have these pristine buttons to the water, but they do have literally wetlands in their backyard and then on the lake. And I do think we have to be mindful of those geological differences. Some probably man-made because of old development, and some which are naturally. Because of the low, the lower level or how things of that nature. But I think we balance those as different bodies and committees in the town pretty well. I don't think I haven't, at least in my experience, seen us go, you're 600 feet up here next to this brook, but then comes down and adjacent to the lake, we want you to be this far away.
Do you want to join us, Catherine?
My directionals went off. Like, I don't, it's dark.
How you doing?
But I do think that buffers on
Having a meeting
make that harder.
about the zoning regulations.
Yeah. Any thoughts of any that we need to have or amend? Any thought, we're discussing any thoughts of any that we need to amend or that are
We're looking
needed?
at zoning amendments. And what they think we might want to change in the ordinance this year, rather than me coming up with it.
Oh, for town meeting?
Yeah,
For town meeting.
I think some of the ones we talked about are that answer. Proactive and thoughtful, and then some of them are from the experience in the boards, thinking about people, projects that come forward in the last several years.
Everybody has to have the sewer.
There you go.
Regardless.
All right.
I mean, I think that the whole digital advertising is definitely something we want to be ahead of.
Yes.
Yeah,
And I think that would be,
I agree.
I think that's coming soon.
I agree.
And then once, production of automobiles flow,
Yeah.
then, yeah, it's gonna make,
You could have downtown.
I would say within 2 years.
I definitely will. Without a doubt.
I think it'll take a year for production.
Because, I mean, they
To go
could
like
turn
West Street,
lights, the kind of parking lots they could put in.
Are we talking about making them more strict? It depends on what you're talking about. Like, if we're talking about making it for non,
They could be
it's only 20 feet.
A screen, sure.
Which I think is low. I think it's 100 on vernal pools. So I thought that would be increased. We're looking at
When you read
expansion
about that distraction, that would cover it.
in the downtown.
I mean, I think you could even go so far as start to really think, set screen size. A projecting screen size could be up this
To develop
size.
downtown into something more viable commercially and to keep it
Play on that word.
Sure.
Projection.
Oh, sure. Maybe you could just.
The digitization.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Right.
Because of
Have to
the
feel that.
Oh.
Lawyers are.
housing Need some more
But
help
it's like, you're right.
rather than just.
You know, do we
handing it
want to
over
allow
better to-
applicants to start doing that?
You need to provide.
They're not signage per se.
Right.
So that was another thing.
Because of limited parking, they would have to provide parking. I think Canoodles.
Oh, yeah.
Well, when the VFW put theirs in, and I think they adjusted it, they like sign.
But people
And
park until
I
there's
go
no
through
parking, and they're
downtown
gonna
at
start,
5
you
in the
know,
morning.
parking
What's
at
it
Tilton
say?
School.
I'm like,
I think
this
he
is
wants to
blinding.
just parking, but
So that is some
unfortunately,
that if I have.
you had people take.
So the one
Didn't
that.
know. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the banners. Like pulsing.
We should recommend some strengthening of that section.
More parking.
Play around with some language that strengthens
I think that's a good thought. That's, like I said, it's coming.
I just have one more question on, if you look at page 35, and this has been something I struggled with the zoning board for a little while, and I don't even know if we've done it right because it's kind of, so on page 35, non-conforming uses of the zoning ordinance, do you have it there? If you, I have another copy.
Oh, no, I have it.
I have it.
I'm trying not to like
Yeah.
have this thing fall apart.
Yeah. it's
On
on-
9.3 on page 35, so a
Page
non-conforming use, 35, 9.3 on page 35,
Oh, flip it over, flip it over.
the double sided.
Here you go.
Oh, 36 again.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Well, because his was probably not copied double sided, or maybe they should.
so it's a non-conforming use may be expanded only with the permission of the zoning board of adjustment and only within the limits of the lot on which it exists at the time of the passage of the portion of the zoning ordinance which caused it to become non-conforming. Huh. Yeah, so there's a couple issues with it. One is now you have a lot, residential lot that's non-conforming, 24 Silver Lake Road, example. Totally non-conforming for size, for everything, right? For frontage. So I would say, okay, you gotta go to zoning board because you're non-conforming and you're looking to use it or expand it or whatever, because it's vacant. But what are they coming to zoning board for? Just permission? Do they have to notify abutters? Is it a special exception? Is it a variance? Or is it just come to zoning board and say, hey, can I do it? Like, I've never seen that on a zoning board. Because then what do I tell them? Do they have to pay? Like, is there a fee? Do they file an application? And what does the application say? Permission? Like, there's no such thing.
Right.
So I have been doing it kind of under special exception, which I don't even know if that's legal because it doesn't say special exception, but you as the zoning board kind of followed that. We're giving you a special exception for a quote non-conforming, because most of the time if it's non-conforming, it's too small. They're asking for setbacks as well,
Sure.
like 24 Silver
Oh,
Lake.
so they're
did.
coming anyway.
Most of the time, but not always. They
Right.
can say we're going to meet the setbacks, but it's still non-conforming.
Oh.
Or they already have a house and it's non-conforming. Are you expanding a non-conforming to build a garage? That's an expansion of a non-conforming lot. Because saying to be expanded. So if you put a garage on your house on a lot that's non-conforming, then you're expanding a non-conforming. And what are you asking for? Just permission? I just think that's a little bit odd. And I'm not sure I've never really known what to do with this, and I don't even know if I'm interpreting it right. And are they just talking about a use and not a size variance or a?
And how is 9.3 different than 9.2? The intent of 9.2. Right?
Because that's if you're changing from one non-conforming use to another non-conforming use. So if you are a retail business in a residential area and you want to become a.
This was 9.3 was born out of the simple
Right.
word expansion.
Exactly. Right.
Well, it's probably
And-
not quite a week.
Herein lies, our 100 Autumn Drive and, but it was not a non-conforming use anymore anyway, so that was the other issue. But it's just, if you were me and you came here, day one and you're reading this, you know, I didn't know what to do with them. So that's another thing we should address, and I can work on it if they think, if that's something you think we can, I guess we call it a special exception.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think, you know, use the experience of what you tried to do, right, through special exception. Under this expansion for non-conforming. And see if we can get some framework language that's not so, yeah. Right.
Ambiguous.
Vague.
Obtuse, ambiguous. Yeah, vague, obtuse and vague. If you're coming to us with something obtuse and vague, we're not interested.
Oh,
Let this foreigner in. Damn,
Took right over.
speak too, didn't she?
I know. We're gonna be putting things up there, so maybe people are off sitting out there.
sit next to you. Let me grab myself over.
I don't think they're coming back.
I apologize. I thought I was at 6:30.
Oh, yeah, that's okay. I did, yeah. I knew my husband, I did 6 with zoning, you did 6. and she
Oh,
didn't wait. Just wanted to start earlier.
Did you like my brain? Did you like my brain? I dropped a bottle of
Yep.
water.
But I don't know why they do that.
What was ridiculous? Tim wrote a note, Tim sent a note during the meeting, you know, to Jason.
Yeah.
You could stay there. You could sit there. You can sit there. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't need to sit here. We're not.
Oh, yeah.
We'll be right there.
You could sit there. Go ahead. I'll let you guys.
Yeah, we're here or there?
I don't care.
It's up to you.
It's all very informal.
Yeah.
This is Fred Center, by the way. Fred
How you
from the
doing?
planning board.
That's me.
John, I don't have a bill for you because I had to listen to her 3 times today.
Yeah, I was looking to see if I could get that. Yeah. What time flew? You're not getting it unless you can somehow. Yeah. And that's what I said. Like, that's probably why I get. Yep, that's why I said.
Do we have anybody who has really good penmanship?
You want to put up there? Excuse me. Oh.
Yeah, if I were you, would read it.
Leanne said she would do it.
Oh, do you want to do it now? I'm happy to relate by tomorrow. Someone the definition.
No.
You want, this you want to add, this thing you want to
Yes.
add. So one the definition. The definition, so that's steep slope.
You had mentioned that.
Okay. Stormwater runoff.
No steep slopes and
So general. That includes farms,
No. That's fine, because someone understood.
Next time, lighting.
Oh, yeah, of course. One of the before.
Remember overhead projectors?
I still have one. Yeah. Every so
Actually,
often.
those would be really good. Can you still get bulk for it?
I don't know. I don't use it but once a year.
To do puppets?
No, you can slap this calculator. But, now they're electronic ones. Like I have a electronic one. It's called Elmo. And it, does the same thing. And, you don't need to light up in there, put anything underneath it, take a picture of it too. Yeah, nobody uses it. Just like the mimeograph machine is long since gone. Do, it has that sound. Gone. Actually, it's really hard to get toner right now. There's a toner.
Really?
Yeah. Like if
You have
you
a
guys
list you're with?
have a running a copy machine,
Well, your group.
it's almost impossible to get toner. Like one of those, like we've been waiting at school. Like we have our order forever waiting.
Oh.
Did everybody get a copy of the deadlines for,
Yes.
Oh, no.
Could that be emailed out? I'm not very good at keeping paper.
I can send it to you. I have it on my.
Thank you, Leanne. I appreciate
if
it.
you would send it to all of us,
I'm really
Leanne,
good
because
at saving.
I misplaced paper. My deadline might end up in my budget committee for the school file.
And then the non-conforming. All right, I guess we just have the group that was in the private room.
Private suite.
I just paid $1,000 for new glasses, and I swear I couldn't see that much.
Oh, boy.
Matt, do you have your list?
Scott has it.
Oh.
Were you defaulting to me?
Oh, you gotta give it to Leanne.
There's still other people to default to.
Why don't you, why don't you go with the list you got?
Oh, you guys just shooting the breeze there, talking about where you're going for dinner.
Yeah,
No.
no. It was productive, but I don't think it was, I don't know, do we have anything to add to this? Do we want to talk
You think
about the
some of the stuff
Anchorage?
has already been mentioned? Is that?
I didn't.
I didn't get a chance to see what you
Why
had.
don't you read what's been mentioned so far?
So, top three.
Yeah, would you like me to strategic plan your conversation?
Let me go through these and see what you
Yeah, we don't
have.
have very vague
All right,
things.
so we have, one group came up with, in definitions, they felt we need a better definition or add a definition for steep slope.
That was part of some of the things we talked about.
The stormwater runoff, need to look at the stormwater runoff ordinance. Solar, I'm not sure what they mean, solar general.
We talked
farms
about
and
that.
Residential,
Farms as well as residential solar.
We talked about that.
okay. Lighting,
Good.
Great.
cluster housing,
Briefly, yeah,
Airbnb.
a little bit. Looks like you hit all the things.
I know, protect the aquifer, but we already have the groundwater protection district.
Yeah.
So again, I'm not sure, protect aquifer. Snow storage, I assume more direction on snow storage.
It looks like you got all the things we talked about up there.
Signage for charging stations, we've talked about. Downtown parking limit expansion. This has to do with apartments, expansion downtown, requiring them to establish parking before they're allowed to expand. zoning for cannabis, if it becomes legal. This group talked about putting it in the industrial zone. Wetland. The wetland buffer, right now your buffer for open water is 20 feet. We talked about possibly putting that to 40. Non-conforming, if anyone reads 9.3, I believe it's on page 28, and can tell me what that means, I'd be happy to enforce it, but right now it's pretty ambiguous. Someone agreed, we didn't know what to do with that. It really speaks of expansion of a non-conforming use requires permission of the zoning board. I don't know what permission means. Does that mean it's a application? Do they have to notify abutters? Is it a special exception? It doesn't really say anything about permission. I'm not sure how to legally bring that to a judiciary board. And I think we already have, unless you guys have something else.
You checked our boxes.
On the signage, it wasn't just for the broader group. We talked about the charging stations proposed at Tanger as an example of something that most on the group didn't want to see Tilton turn to Vegas. And to get ahead of that, but also acknowledging that right now there are other ways to provide that type of opportunity without signage. But we also broadened the conversation to say, let's be real about technology. And any storefront down here, if they had enough to invest, could turn their front window into signage.
Yeah.
And let's stay ahead of that by thinking about language in that particular area of zoning. So I just want to make sure that the broader group knew the conversation went a lot deeper.
Right, and not having anything now for this does put a lot of pressure on the zoning board, because now you got a big company like Voltar coming to zoning, looking for a variance for that signage.
Right, but I don't think, I guess I would say the zoning, because you said you were all pretty green. You can use the existing example that exists by Dunkin' Donuts that has absolutely no advertising, but provides a service that they're claiming they're going to provide.
Right, and I think the planning board said that to them when they came.
We
It's a
told
different
them that.
model, right?
Yeah.
Different
It's a very
model
different
and.
Not, like a different business model.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like they're not charging.
Yeah.
They're not charging for now.
And the interesting thing is when he came,
Pushback.
I asked,
Sure.
they have a contract with Tanger, but they don't have any existing in operation right now. So we're gonna be the guinea pig
We
apparently.
don't need to be.
No, well, we know that. Don't worry.
I worry all the time. I got two.
You shouldn't.
Right. And the other
You
issue
got
with
keys
this
to
is
the,
that-
you got keys
Yeah.
to that castle.
Don't worry about
Yeah,
it.
and if you did allow this in an ordinance, it said we're gonna allow off-premise signage, then you're opening that up to every business to have off-premise signage, right? Not just
Yeah.
for electronic, charging.
We don't have to say yes.
Scott had a great idea, though, if it does come to fruition, that putting in something to the extent of encouraging or having downtown businesses being included of what that downtown Tilton can offer people. If that were part of the scrolling thing, if the signs ever came to be, to try to have something like that included rather than a sign that was promoting the New England Patriots
I
or
think
whatever.
we have and I think, so again, to talk about broader dialogue is a great opportunity. We also talked about having a responsibility with regard to, you put in something that visually distracting. You think about those young kids driving, and I don't mean this offensively, and much older people driving. You're gonna create some visual
Watch it.
distraction that's gonna
It's in the law.
increase the opportunity.
It's in-
for
Yeah, isn't this facing the parking space, not facing the street?
It's
It's all of them.
people can't even walk with a cell phone without tripping up the side.
That's true.
They're
Yeah.
facing the roads, they're facing every which way.
I guess I just because this is my first time ever doing this, I feel like we've gotten real lost in the weeds on specific cases. Is that what we're here for tonight? If we are, then,
We use
Well, I
it
think
as a broader conversation.
No.
okay.
Around.
That, we did
signage.
not.
It's a
Okay.
great example to talk about much more broadly signage.
Sure, okay.
You think about just an old school painted sign, well, we're not there anymore. When we have a business saying, well, I won't put this up. And then we did talk about a downtown storefront saying, well, I want to change my whole front window. We don't have anything that really prohibits that or says, as members of these commissions or community members, what do we want our town to look like?
Yeah,
Right?
what do we want it to look
And we may not agree, but we agree that we're going to get someplace close, or we're going to disagree, and the majority is going to agree. but to talk about signage. It was a good example to talk about.
Okay.
broadly.
And
And it's-
ordinances usually come out of applications that you've seen that have been difficult or raise a new issue that the ordinance hasn't thought of. Really, it's the ordinance catching up with, with
The
modern
times.
technology in a lot of ways that, and for lack of anything specific in there, like the cannabis, if there's nothing in there, then they can do whatever they want. So, you try and, you don't want to overzone and be too specific, but, you have to kind of sometimes, usually that's why it comes from zoning boards a lot of times, the recommendations to the planning, because they're the ones that see all the variances and they're saying, this is,
We're seeing this all the time.
yeah, or, this is something we don't know what to do because there's no language in there that gives us any direction of what the people want. Because this is really about what your voters want. Do they want, maybe they don't care. Maybe the voters don't care for the sign. It's their town, they're the ones that want to paint what they want to see, regardless of what everybody here even, or I think is right. So.
But it's our responsibility as a zoning, planning and boards and the Conservation Commission to
To lead.
oversee what has been left to us from the past.
Right.
I'd just like to interject now by reading the vision, part of the vision statement from the master plan, because I think this is very important. There's only one specific thing mentioned here, and that's extra 20, but I'd like to read this because I think it's very appropriate and very important for us to remember. A vision for the future of Tilton as a thriving community must include positive improvements in the following areas. Positive improvements, okay? Number one, improving the quality of life for citizens through community and safety improvements. Number two, actively working to protect the natural resources that buffer the community from the development at Exit 20. Number three, thoughtfully planning for future capital needs of the community so that infrastructure keeps pace with growth trends. I think those are three very important things and the reason for our board's existing. And I think we need to remember that. And I think all of these things that we've mentioned, whether it's a technological improvement or change in the way we do things in signage, or whether it's going out and making sure the soil doesn't erode, that it's all very important to our community and what we want to stand for as we move to the future. I just wanted
That'd be
to
good.
interject that.
Absolutely.
So I think now we just need to narrow down, because obviously we've got plenty of minutes now, and we're gonna attack all these
Leanne,
this
there
year.
was one other that came up in our
Yep.
group. Section 15, Article K on page 68. And the question that we had on that, and it reads the relationship between state and local requirements. This is about groundwater. It says whenever a provision of this ordinance differs from the requirements imposed by the state of New Hampshire or by some other town ordinance, provision which imposes the greater restriction or higher standard shall govern. So our question is we're wondering if maybe that should be that should be an overriding idea that we put across the board, not just in one section.
That's a good idea.
So just because, and the question came up in terms of wetlands variance, et cetera, going from 125 to 75 because they have brought folks from the state in to provide, in fact, the state requirements were 75. But ours are 125, and understanding that there are variances that will happen. But the question becomes is that if we put this as an overriding premise within our documents, our ordinances, then it makes it easier for us to say no at that point in time to what the state ordinance may be.
Right. And there are likely little nuanced provisions all over the place from different committees and different voting outcomes that say as a community, we want more restrictive, or in some instances, we might want more open provisions, but that's a really great comment.
Yeah. So, and the legality of it is that the way that our system is designed in this country is that it gives chances for municipalities to override state restrictions, ordinances, et cetera. It gives states the ability to override some federal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right.
Goes back to local control.
Correct.
Yeah, and I believe there is an RSA, and I thought it was somewhere in here, that does say that, the more restrictive applies. And I
Yeah.
don't know where that, I believe
It's an RSA, yeah.
So, I mean, I don't have any objection to putting it in our ordinance, to be clear, but I believe that that is,
Yeah, I mean, it
well,
might
one
just-
thing that we don't have, which would be nice, is a general, we don't have like just general provisions.
Intro paragraph.
Oh,
And I think, you know, out of the conversations we talked about with the zoning board being quote unquote green a little bit, being able to have something as that as a founding premise or foundational premise allows them to have a little bit of background in terms of what, you know, what and when they can say yes or no.
Sorry, Conservation Commission's always green.
Oh, hi, hungry, I'm dad.
And the other thing that we talked about was that this is sort of a starting point, and we don't necessarily have to have language for January, but we have these as a starting point, and maybe we all get together again in another month or two and take, say, the first three or the last three, whatever, and begin to talk through what we want to see, what we suggest, and do it gradually over the course of the next year, rather than saying, we have a deadline, we've got to get something, and then it's not quite right. We want to do this right. We want to make sure it's perfect.
Right, because this is typical, you know, I mean, all towns end up, you know, in September, they say to start in the summer, but you know how that goes. And
But we've
you're
got to
busy and-
start here. We're
Right.
in
Yeah.
good shape.
I really want to second her because I don't feel comfortable developing opinions on anything on this list right now.
So I also had a recommendation as a nice, used it before in the past. Some of these could get equal ranking, but if each person who participated today received this list and independently ranked them as your number one through your last rank and emailed them and we synthesized, you're going to see common investments to focus in on. And some might be nice and simple. We'll just all agree we're going to check those off, but it's a nice independent ranking and then you can see where the group ranks them all together when you bring the rankings together.
Right, I can probably do that and then email if we can do. We do that with the mitigation.
We just
plan.
did that with the mitigation. I was going to say, that's what we did.
Priorities, yeah.
I would bet that Mr. Pearson could put together a Google form.
You
where
think?
could just rank it, where you could just rank it. where you
Right,
could just-
right on Google Docs and then they can just, yeah.
So, yeah.
Google
Well,
Docs is
Google
great,
Forms easy,
isn't it?
then it'll-
Mhm.
Yeah. And then, you know,
No, you don't
Yeah.
have to, it just literally puts it in the spreadsheet for you.
one of the other things that was in our group was when a proposal comes down from a certain individual that wants to do something in the town, as soon as that proposal comes in, that it goes out to all of the other boards that are involved, whether it be the planning board, the zoning board, conservation commission, immediately, so that we can all get on the same page at the same time. We can, it's called communication among the boards, and just get the ball rolling to see what they're gonna have to do. Some people come before the planning board with, you know, guns blazing, and want this done now, and they want us to approve this or that or the other thing. Then we send them back to another board, and then it comes back to us again, and we send them back to another board.
That's on the web, that is presently on the website though.
Thank you.
So
Everything
I
is
don't
on the
think that we
website.
need
Everybody
to,
has access to the website. All the cases are posted there.
As soon as they come in,
Well, I mean, it's,
as soon
again,
as
we're a
it's
one-man band
scheduled.
right now over in land use. So
yeah,
as soon as I can get them up, I get them up. As soon as I can get stuff out, there's a lot
give
going
me
on.
a call, maybe help.
Okay, well, anyway, they go on. We try and get them on as quick as we can.
Yep.
But yeah.
I would just add, Leanne, that once they're scanned, all it takes is a click of a button
And just send them out.
to send them out to people rather than having people have to go to the website and then go down and try to find each one.
I'll try and send them out every month.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
I've been trying to send you ones, at least the ones that I think are pertinent to you, but we'll try and do a better job. But again, we're limited resources, but we'll do the best we can.
The only
And
thing I
yeah.
can say about that is that especially for the zoning board, because there are green people.
They're not that green. Don't let them kid you.
Well,
They're
It's
doing
not
a
easy
great
being
job. They're
green.
doing a great
No,
job.
I think that when I've sat in on them, sometimes it can be overwhelming to see that many things, you know, well, is this mine or is this not mine? And I think that's one of the reasons going on the website and looking, that's just my opinion, but I wanted to interject that. One thing too that we discussed a little bit, which has already affected parts of our town, some of you may know it and some of you may not, is that we have a big water park coming down the road to Franklin. And it's already affecting residents in the,
I just want to be clear, because when you said water park, I'm thinking like.
I mean, it's just like.
No, I'm talking about the kayak, but that's what they're calling it. They're calling it a water park. White water park, okay? It's a water park. Not, it may even have slides eventually, you know, we don't have,
They're already actively working on the water.
yeah. But it's already affecting Lockmere residents. So just,
How is it affecting water?
it's because they're raising and lowering the water.
Well, I mean,
Water.
if you said, what if a sake all the way through?
I thought that was the runoff right now. So
Yeah.
that's what-
it's
Yeah.
I think that water park gets like from the state, and as I'm a little bit speaking out of turn, we actually went tubing with the guy who's making it. They get certain dates that they're allowed
Right.
to do water, and it comes from the state.
Right.
Okay.
Same
So they
here.
can't
But it
just like
hasn't,
willy-nilly.
but it's not been communicated in the past, and it's been an issue. There've been a couple of meetings held as a result of that.
That's interesting, because it's a normal time, at least twice a year.
Yes.
There's a normal natural drought.
Yeah.
October 15th.
No, this is, as a matter of fact, our state rep has been involved in some of that, in having meetings,
Those haven't been quite publicized.
so.
That's unfortunate.
I thought that was about the damming and the dam system.
Well, no, it's also, but it's all a result of what's going on in the water park, the Whitewater Park. It was involved in that, so. Something for us to be aware of in the future as we move to the future, because we're not gonna be just a little island of Tilton. I mean, with other towns involved, and we're gonna probably get closer and closer as.
Big Belmont agrees.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Couple more garbage.
Yeah, exactly. Couple more racetracks. Go-kart tracks or whatever that was that they went over our aquifer. Catherine and I went to the hearings on those. It didn't do any good, but
So next steps, I
so,
didn't know we were doing it this way. I'm gonna have to step out. and leave and
Okay, what-
apologize.
let me
Well,
just,
we're wrapping up.
we're going to wrap. We just came back to the discussion. We can start with this list, think about it, she's gonna send out ranking, prioritize it individually, and we'll come up with rankings as a group. Then we'll come back together, okay, and actually come up with whether we want to do anything in terms of the next election. Do we want to have any ordinances?
Right, because we're
Do
gonna
we
do it
just
that
wanna
way. We
skip
might not
them
have time.
And just use this as planning and possibly
for
plan
next
in the
year.
future to get together once a quarter to have this kind of a session? I think that would be wonderful.
Makes a lot of sense. Then you can get patterns
Mhm.
faster and share information more
Yeah.
quickly.
Yeah.
I'd like to make one quick comment.
Mhm.
When we were meeting, Matt made a point, which is sometimes, either green or not, that there are some zoning ordinances which in fact may have been put into place that today are no longer important or have, because of technology and time, things have changed. The one that I think maybe someone had brought up earlier, like the lighting ordinance, which references rodeos, and the state of New Mexico, which is, and that ordinance is already expired, is the lighting ordinance. If I would encourage everyone to try to spend a few minutes reading through the ordinances, and if you find something that's outdated, that is, I think, important to bring back and try to deal with more sooner than later.
Anybody else got any more comments before?
I just have a question. So, and when I'm gonna email, if I just put Conservation Commission, it goes to, I don't know if I have everybody's.
Goes to all of
name.
us.
It goes to all of you. Okay, perfect. Okay.
TCC at Tilton and H.
Yep. Okay.
And I want to thank all of you for coming. Does anybody have any more comments or before we adjourn?
I want to thank you as well. I mean, I think this is great that all the boards sat together. This is.
Catherine?
So when you're looking at definitions, what is often forgotten is that those definitions are also in subdivision regulations. And I think if you look through and read them, and site plan, you'll find that some of those definitions are not the same.
You're correct, Catherine, definitely.
Remember that?
Mm-hmm, I do.
I've read overall.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
I'll plan my night better next time.
Thank you.
You don't meet next month, do
No, you have December off.
we?
It's Christmas week.
What will I do?
I don't know.
I can't live without one of them.
January. I'll text it to you. Good night, guys.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Dane, can I keep these?
Thank you.
You need this back.
You want to keep it?
Yeah, I
This
keep
is
it.
copy.
Yeah.
Kathy?
Leave mine because I have one.
I have those ones. I don't have the master plan.
You know,
Yeah, anything you don't want, I'll put back, and next time we meet, in case of new people, I won't make more copies. Copies. Yeah, thanks, guys. I think this was really,
Yeah, finally at the meeting. It's been a long time.
invested.
I have all this stuff on planning board. Was I supposed to do anything with it?
Between boards.
And they make it a lot easier too,
Minutes.
when we go to vote on something, we know how everyone stands and,
Oh, you picked it up from over
Little more
there.
context.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Where was it?
It doesn't go in a book. It's just the minutes, the old minutes that need to be filed in a book, and I had Gail print them all out.
I don't know why I had.
Because I had them on that table.
Oh, okay. Somebody must have handed them to me.
I don't get
We
many
closed
way
on
outside
Bill's
of
house
Zoom.
today.
Oh,
Yes.
You know,
I will see the planning board next week.
People are real human
I'm
beings.
not coming
Yeah.
again.
Are you the guy on TV?
I'm eating
Yeah.
turkey next week.
I'm not, you're right. In 2 weeks, I'll see you guys.
2 weeks, okay, 2 weeks.
I think that was pretty good.
What day?
Good night, Ian.
Good night, thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
Have a nice Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Bye, Brian.
Matt, have a good vacation.
Thank you, Dane.
All right.
Leanne,
Yeah.
this is interesting.
Good night, folks.
Thanks,
Good night.
Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
What's
I'll
interesting?
call you. Did you
Good
bring,
job.
did you
Good
bring,
job.
Thanks, John.
did you bring your car,
My bro-
her Medicare card?
No,
You were going to.
I know.
Are they gonna take her tomorrow?
It's on the kitchen table that right now has paperwork about this. Steve. I
You have
put it right-
Medicare?
No, somebody helped take care of.
Oh,
Yeah.
same, yeah.
Yeah, take care. Not yet.
I am.
I am too.
Do you wanna leave it someplace? I just am afraid I
Yeah.
may need it tomorrow.
Mhm.
You didn't know he took care of me, did you?
Everybody takes care of each other.
What's that?
How's Janice?
No, he's come back.
I mean, you know, with the winter coming and, I mean, with leaves, winterized houses, she has that type of support.
Yeah,
that-
I mean, I've been over there and she's already hired a guy to plow and she's pretty able and she doesn't need the wood. I thought she needed the wood, but the wood was only to heat the barn. Other than that, she's got a house. And really, it's her dog. She doesn't want to leave, I think. And I think she wants to do it.
Yeah.
So
Well,
She has family around.
she has a sister, you know, I mean, they didn't have any children. And so she has a sister. A sister is pretty close to an older sister that she takes care of more than anything. Janice
Oh,
always
that,
does.
that can be good.
Yeah, but she has Trish and she's went down actually and did Trish's leaves.
Well,
last week,
we've
so-
really been concerned about it.
She's
And
actually doing, she's
I don't
actually,
mean that we're afraid she's gonna, we just,
Right.
we care about her.
I know,
We
I know.
want her, if she needs anything, we
Yeah.
want
I
to help
have
her.
told that. And she's just very private. She's just very able. She's doing well. She did, I think she did the fair at the church a little bit. She was supposed to run a whole big thing, but she didn't. But she got involved a little bit, did some stuff. And like I said, she's been her sister's in Mass. So I'm gonna go back and see her next week and see where she's at. But I don't know. I don't think she'll come back. I mean,
You
she
don't?
said she doesn't. Yeah, I don't know. I just don't think so. Because I don't think she's gonna leave the dogs and she had a new puppy and, you know, Roger was just always there, you know. He
Hmm.
just was there all the time taking care of it. So
Yeah, if
It's
there's
gonna be
anything,
interesting.
you know,
Well, I've been through it.
I appreciate
That's-
that.
we
Well,
all
that-
enjoy helping each other out.
Yeah.
That's what New Hampshire's
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
Our communities. You know, I went over, one year I went and plowed Pat's driveway, remember that?
Yeah, I sure do.
I went to the wrong house.
We plowed somebody else's yard. He called me and said,
I said, yeah, that was me, just plowed your driveway, I saw you in the window waving, thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
You didn't do my driveway. I'm like,
and then he called me, Jane, what kind of car does Pat have?
Oh,
What
no.
driveway did you end up plowing?
I don't remember who it was, but they're all happy. I took a broom
You
and
know
swept off their car and everything.
You know whose I think it was? I think it was Gail Bestick.
No,
Yeah, I think it
I
was.
know, it was the end of.
I think it was
I
Gail
don't
Bestick.
know.
I really think that's who it was.
Myself, David.
Happens.
Yeah, so I don't know. And, she said she might sell the house. It's a big house.
I know.
Not just for her. It was a big house just for two of them.
But
But
the
but
hard
Roger
part is-
liked it, huh?
But I
Where you
went through all
Where
of
you
that.
gonna go? You can't
Yeah.
find anything smaller.
Well, the houses are so crazy expensive.
But sometimes I know with my own experience, it's the memories that get to you.
Yes.
It's better. You can't move on until you move on, so to speak.
So anyway,
You
thank
know.
you. I will let her know and I appreciate that and be patient with us in land use as
You know,
we
if the
find our
basement
way.
floods or something and she needs a pump.
Yeah.
Give all of us a ring,
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
all.
Or she needs a blueberry pie.
All right,
I'll
well.
split it with her. Not for you. I did.
All right. Well, I think this was good. Thank you for coming. We had a good attendance.
I think it was great.
Yeah.
Apologies, I was late again. I thought it
Hey,
was.
that's all right.
6:30.
The 9:30, the 6:30 thing, I knew we might screw some people up.
Uh.
And I'll send emails out and,
This is interesting. I want a copy of this.
what's up?
Well,
Do you think the
Okay.
fire department would have any interest in doing a burn down of a house as a scheduled,
Well, this comes out of the.
They have, they have,
the Ricketts house, we just bought it, but I don't think it can be saved.
they go
Are you
through
kidding?
now all
but
the
I just. it's
stuff
something.
that they have to go
You
through.
think what?
But then
With
it turns
lead
out,
Yeah.
and all that,
Oh,
yeah.
taking hazardous stuff out.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna be
That
close
they-
friends.
They're, but they, it doesn't hurt to ask them.
I don't. I've lost my copy of my master plan and my,
Yeah.
I think.
Here's one, you want these?
I didn't know how they did it, 'cause I know they did it for new car, for Honda, they burned those houses.
I can refer to these.
Way too much sills and roofs,
Oh, yeah,
Thank you.
oh, yeah,
top to bottom,
oh, yeah.
windows,
Yeah, I think it went
insulation,
really
there's
well.
not much good,
No, yeah, yeah,
I know,
Yeah.
it's sad.
no, yeah. No, it was a leak in the house and then now the foundation's cracking, has old bricks, it's crumbling in all the corners. I really don't think it can be saved. Not cost effectively, you're better off tearing it down and rebuilding it.
Where?
Bill's house.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Can I tell you something?
Yeah.
You know why I wouldn't want to live there?
The guy died.
Oh, yeah, hung himself. He was, every time I go over there, that's all I can think
Yeah, I
of.
turned it down.
Yeah. That's not to bother me. I mean,
Well, it bothers me. Wouldn't that bother you? I grew up in
I
a,
don't know, somebody said weird stuff happened in my house, and then I hear the floor creak or something.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
it used to bother me, and I realized that in the winter, the house, because it's
Yeah.
balloon frame,
yeah.
so, everything shrinks and expands a lot.
Yeah.
And
I've had,
Well, I
everything
didn't-
would
would
be-
you want to-
I've had a lot of experience with.
Oh, yeah.
Not that, my stuff hasn't been bad,
That's good.
but that kind of thing would be bad.